Hey Jake, how's it going? I'm looking through your essay and I made some edits earlier today, but I would like to provide for you some oral feedback to give you a better idea of where I'm coming from, to make sure that you're kind of maximizing your potential when you write your long comp on the MCAS. So looking through, I see that you wanted to write about Katniss and catching fire, and that the prompt you chose was about a character earning the respect of friends, family, and community. One point that I really want to drive home to you, and I know I've said this before, but I really want you to put it into the front of your brain so that you remember it for tomorrow, is that you have to assume that the person who's correcting your exam has never read the book that you're talking about before. So you have to pretend that the person who's reading your long comp tomorrow, for example, if you write about catching fire, pretend they've never even heard of catching fire. They've never even heard about the Hunger Games. And that every character that you discuss is someone that's going to be foreign to them. So while you may know who Katniss is, and you may know that Rue is her young friend, and that they live in an oppressive society, and that Katniss is actually a hero, the person who's correcting the exam has no idea about any of that. So make sure that you're being extra explicit when you describe people and things that happen, because the person who's reading this doesn't know any of it. So to make sure that you stay organized, I want you to take a look back at the prompt with me. To make it easier, I rewrote the prompts at the top of your essay so we can look at it together. Often in works of literature, a character earns the respect of his or her friends, family, or community. From a work of literature you have read in or out of school, select the character who earns the respect of his or her friends, family, or community. In a well-developed composition, identify the character, describe how the character earns the respect of his or her friends, family, or community, and explain how the character's experience is important to the work as a whole. So, as I read through your essay, it was apparent to me that the main idea, the main point of this writing for you, is to get across the fact that Katniss earns respect of her friends, family, and community within the novel Catching Fire. And it's furthermore made apparent because we can see that that's the main idea, the main question that's being asked in the essay. So we're going to underline that in blue. I'm going to match up with this main idea right here. So now you want to break it down, and I can't do the dance because it's over oral feedback, but you want to break it down, Mr. Duffy style, into different parts. So your first paragraph is your introduction. Your second body paragraph, which we're for all purposes calling paragraph 1, is where you're going to want to identify the character. This is important. You're going to want to talk about Katniss and who she is as a person in the book. We know that she's not like a dictator. We know that she's not a jerk. We know she's not the antagonist. But the person who's reading the book, who's reading your essay does not know that. So you want to talk about Katniss and the things that she does. You actually do this in your essay. But what you want to make sure of, and I'll actually just point to it, you talk about Katniss right here. That's in the second body paragraph. You want to make sure that that's in the first body paragraph because that's the thing that is identified and asked of you to answer first. Okay? Also, when you're talking about Katniss, you want to set the stage for who she is before you move on to talk about what she does. Next, and I'm going to put this in a different color, the question's asking you to describe how the character earns the respect of his or her friends, family, and community. So, it's kind of hard for me to write with this, but how does she earn respect? Okay? And you kind of mentioned that in your first body paragraph, which is right here. One thing I really want to point out too, and I was a little surprised when I read this because this isn't usually a flaw of yours in your writing, but your first body paragraph right here, it only has one sentence, and you know that it takes 4 to 5 complete sentences to make up a paragraph. And so I wonder if you use your writing template, because I think that would have mandated that you write at least 4 sentences in the way that's split up. But you do mention here that Katniss earns the respect for putting white flowers all around Rue's body, so the people in District 11 put 3 fingers together and show them to Katniss as a sign of respect and thank you for putting flowers around her body. Well, you don't say who Rue is, and you don't say why putting flowers around her body is something that shows that she's respectable. This is perfectly valid evidence from the text, but you want to explain it in more detail because, again, you're telling someone about the story who's never read it before. So I wrote in red, and the things that are in red are my edits. They respect her for doing this because. So you're going to want to give more details as to why does that action bring about respect. Well, we know that Rue was a 12-year-old. She was in the Hunger Games. The Katniss took care of her. We know that they weren't supposed to form alliances in the arena. That's not the purpose of the games. The purpose of the games is to murder each other. So Katniss gave Rue a proper burial, and she treated her like a human being, which is not an expectation or actually a norm in the Hunger Games. That's what you want to get across to the person that's reading this story. You also want to mention that Katniss earned the respect of District 11 people because she gave one of their citizens the proper burial that she would not have had if it were anyone else. And that would go in your second paragraph. Lastly, if you take a look up at the prompts, you want to look at the last part of the essay or the question. Explain how the character's experience is important to the work as a whole. You're going to see this tomorrow. Work as a whole. How does this affect the entire novel? Well, let's move to the third body paragraph. So finally, Katniss's experience is important to the work as a whole because in the book, Katniss traded places with her sister. She took over to feed the family, and without going into the Hunger Games, her family wouldn't have had any food, water, and oil for the rest of their life. This earns Katniss respect because, so you did a great job with your evidence. You did a great job tying it into how else she impacts the book, but you want to tie it back in specifically to respect. How does this bring her respect from other people? Also, if you take a look, that's a bit of a run-on sentence, and it's also only one sentence. So Jake, you want to make sure that you have 4 to 5 sentences in each paragraph, that none of them repeat. Lastly, let's take a look at your conclusion. You want to have a transition into your conclusion. It can be as simple as in conclusion. I crossed out right here because you don't want to say these are the reasons, who she was, what makes her important. You want to be specific. What you write in your introduction are your 3 reasons and your main idea. You want to reiterate that in your conclusion. You don't want to be vague like this. So in conclusion, in the book Catching Fire by Suzanne Collins, Katniss earns the respect of their fans, family, and community because she is kind, because she gives respect to the dead even when the government will hold her accountable for doing so, and because she takes care of her friends and family. Whatever you say throughout your whole essay, you really just want to reiterate in your conclusion. Also, what would anyone do? I'm going to just look at your final closing piece right here. What would anyone do the same thing and take a friend's place for something? I know I would. I'm a little confused about this piece because you're talking about how Katniss covered Rue's body. So she didn't take Rue's place. Also, do not use I. Do not ever use personal pronouns. Because at this point, now that you're in high school, no one cares about you. People just care about what your books you've read. I'm just kidding. But seriously, don't use I in your long comp, okay? Because it's not about your opinion. It's not about what happens to you. It's about your response to literature. And one can assume that because you are a knowledgeable student who has read this book and studied it, the things that you say and the evidence that you use to back it up are valid. So you don't need to say I think or I would. You just say the evidence and your statements. So no I. I have a few recommendations for you. I want you to be explicit with your 3 reasons in the introduction and explicitly repeat each question in its respective paragraph. I also want you to remember that each paragraph should be about 5 sentences, so make sure that you stay aware of that. Also use transition words. first, second, lastly, or finally, in conclusion. And also, rewrite your 3 reasons and the main idea in your conclusion, and you want to be specific. Make sure, Jake, that you use your template to brainstorm and plan everything out. Also, don't be afraid to make up your own graphic design to help brainstorm things. I've been very proud of all the things that you've done. You've done a brilliant job, and you worked very hard. And so I'm excited to see what you come up with tomorrow. I think that you are going to be phenomenal. Well, I hope you rest up tonight and that you had a good time at track today. Get a good night's sleep, get a good breakfast, and I will see you tomorrow. Have a good night, Jake. Take care.